Hi, Claire Mann, vegan psychologist here. And of course, so many of you know me because I'm the person who gave a name to the anguish we feel, which of course is Vystopia, and the book, The Anguish of Being Vegan in a Non-Vegan World. It's my absolute pleasure to be with you at the Animal Rights Conference in Scotland. And I've been talking to Steve Robinson and the team in putting this together. And I'm so proud to be part of this and to hear that so many of the people attending and listening now are out there as activists doing what we can to create and enact animal liberation and a kinder world for all. So I know so many of you went to One Damn Month. I wish I could have been there. I'm highly supportive of Anonymous for the Voiceless. You know, we hear people say things like, well, how do we know how change comes about? Is it, too distressing for people? It might put them off. Is it better to do the slowly approach? If we knew the one best way for people to become vegan and animals to be liberated and not be any form of property or use, we would all be doing it. I myself came to this through graphic footage. And so we just have to find our own way of outreaching to people and reach them in the language that we want to speak to them to, and we can make the biggest impact of change. I know a lot of you are involved in We the Free, another great organisation, which we also have here in Australia, of course, and going to vigils and slaughterhouses and coming back with the stories and sharing with people the enormity of what's going on and what happens in their own choices. And so many people just don't know. There's stereotypes around veganism, of course, and mostly people agree that it's not right to hurt animals, and yet they have what we call psychic defenses to stop them even looking at this. So why do we do this? We do this because of the anguish we feel at knowing about the systematized cruelty towards animals. And then when we tell people, of course, instead of them becoming vegan right away, which they should do, they come up with all sorts of excuses that this would never happen or the government wouldn't allow it. And then, of course, we say, well, if I didn't know about that, what else don't I know? And then we're called a conspiracy theorist. This is the nature of dystopia. And we need to really be resilient. We need to be there for the animals today, tomorrow, and in the years to come. Because I would love the phrase, a rising tide raises all boats. As the tide goes up, all the boats come up. And so each of us around the world in this giant relay race, all contributing to this time when animal use will be a thing of the past and we will have a kinder world. We just have to be part of it. One of the key things, of course, is to have strong connections with other people and to form communities with people so that we find our own tribe, but also is that we're supported in this not yet vegan world. I like to call it a pre-vegan world because so many non-vegans actually do care for other animals, maybe themselves, maybe for their offspring or other humans, but we want to make them pro-vegan so that they have that concern and care and empathy and no harm towards all living beings. So often people in the outreach they have and then coming across this non-vegan world get sort of beaten down. They find that even within the vegan community, there are disagreements, there's counselling and deplatforming and hurt, and they withdraw from that. None of us have the privilege to do that or the right to do that because the animals in the cage can't wait for us to get our act together, really. But let's just understand something around, why do groups fall apart? Why do people have conflict? Now, prior to becoming a vegan psychologist, I was an organizational psychologist, which meant I worked in organizations with groups and teams and culture change. And it is normal and predictable when a group of people come together that there will be differences. And if this is pushed underground and we're told, everybody should get on, we're all on the same side, we've got a venture we're working on, and we ignore that, that will go underground and result in politics and separating groups. We've got to find a language to deal with the differences, to voice our concerns, to find a language so that we do develop norms, which means this is how we do things around here. And this is so relevant to the vegan community as well. Simple little model I want to share with you is by a researcher called Tuckman. Now, it's quite an old model, but it's simple to remember. And I like the simple models because then they're practical and we can use them in all sorts of areas. He basically said, for a group to be performing well, we need to go through 4 different stages, which is forming, storming, norming, and performing. Forming is when we come together as a group of activists. We say, we want to change the world, we want to do things. We want to get the message out there of animal liberation and the imperative of veganism. And then the group gets to the stage of storming. Now, that is where there are differences. People turn up late for meetings. One person doesn't pull their weight. They promised to do something and they didn't deliver. We start sort of having differences in how we think animal liberation will come about. we don't like the welfarist approach, or we're just abolitionist, and then we push everything aside that is meat-free Monday, for instance, and we start having differences. As I said before, if we knew the one best way, we'd all be doing it. We're all abolitionists. But that storming stage cannot be avoided, because if we try to leap across that to say, hey, we're all on the same side, we're here for the animals, we'll just ignore those things, we actually push things underground. And that's where the problems come later and people disband. So finding language to work through that conflict, and often a way I find is when we come together is to say, look, we're going to fall out. There are going to be differences. Someone's going to turn up late for meetings and use excuses. Another person's doing all the work. We need to talk about this. And we need to agree that when these problems come, we will elect to stay in the conversation. Okay, the groups that work the best, the animal liberation and animal rights campaigning organizations that have been going for decades, have found a way to do this. Okay, and particularly with volunteers, because we're all there out of our own sort of care, and we're not in jobs where there can be accountability and everything depends on this, is we are giving our time. And it's really important because all of us are needed. If people work well through a language of dealing with that storming stage and find a language to be truthful, put things on the table and find solutions, we move to a stage of norming, which is this is how we do things around here. And then people adhere to the collective way of operating. And it's often the group pressure and the want to be included in the group and not be excluded that then results in action and commitment. And that's what we call cohesion, is the extent to which people adhere to the norms. Okay? And it's only then that we can get to a stage of performing. Now, this happens not only in activist groups, work groups, friendship groups, sports groups, and of course, families. Now, we haven't got enough time to go into how difficult it is for us to advocate to our families, because there's so many more layers and histories. And, I was your mother and it was good enough for me, and your grandfather. And, you're telling me I brought you up wrongly to feed you on milk and cookies. Okay, so we'll just sort of put that aside for the moment. Be an example to your family. But honestly, my experience over 16 years of being vegan is often other people lead them to veganism. And they'll come back and say, I wish I knew way back then what I know now, because I would have been vegan. So the important thing is learn to have the conversations that matter. For us to be real, powerful advocates, I think it requires two things. We have to do the inner work. Dr. Will Tuttle of the World Peace Diet says is the inside job. Okay? We need to find a way to pass the trauma through our body, have a strong foundation of practices and routines of our physical, emotional, spiritual health to be deeply grounded so that we keep getting resourced. And then we have to become exquisite communicators. Often less is best. If facts alone were enough, everybody would have to be vegan, wouldn't they? So it's very important that you find a way to do this. And then in groups, learn to communicate between you and actually be on the same page so we can advocate for animals. Now, resilience is a term that I use often. How do we be that person when in the face of so much despair and so much cruelty and so many other problems in the world, and then infighting between different groups, how do we remain that resilience? And that really requires us to do that inside job. Now, it's really timely me speaking to you now, because I have a free 50-minute webinar called Vystopia Resilience coming up next week. It'll be Tuesday evening on the 22nd in the UK. So if you'd like to sign up for that, that will be some really good resources for you to put into place now. You can sign up at that at veganpsychologist.com/Vystopia-resilience. So I hope to see a lot of you there to become resourced, work with other people, have a fabulous conference, be open-minded towards other people, be supportive, engage with other people, find friends here and find sustenance and have fun. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for attending the conference. But each day, go out and be a voice for animals. And I hope to see you in person soon. Thank you.